More than 50 injured and many feared dead as a tower block in West London is engulfed in flames.
Grenfell was a bit of a wake-up call for companies such as our own. £1,000 is nothing compared to, obviously, life, is it?
We have seen where rodents have come through and chewed through the membrane. So, especially in London, if you can imagine.
If the waterproofing doesn't work, you can put the best kitchen you like down there. When it's floating in water, it's not going to be the best kitchen anymore.
Look, radon is a killer. It kills, I think, on average in the UK, 1,100 people a year. We're talking life here. It's extremely important. When it comes to waterproofing and gas, don't cut corners, just best practice, do it properly and do it once.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Brick by Brick podcast. Today we've got two amazing special guests, but instead of me introducing them, I think it'd be better if they introduce themselves. So first I'll hand it over to Chris.
Hi, yes, my name is Chris Burbridge. I'm the founder of Delta Membrane Systems, so I was there right at the beginning.
Hi, I'm Georgia Burbridge, also work for Delta Membrane Systems in the technical department, and everything I know is from him.
Thanks for coming down. Good to have you guys here. I know you're not quite based in London, so how was the journey down to London?
Yeah, well, today was a train strike, so we took extra precautions. We left a little bit early, managed to stop for a bite on the way here and a coffee, managed to do a bit of work on the laptop in the car. So, yeah, we're nice and relaxed.
Yeah. Always working, eh? Never switching off.
Always.
So, when you say waterproofing, ourselves as Elmpride Ltd, we get a lot of calls to say, oh, do you fix roofs? Or do you do basements? Or do you do walls? Or all sorts of things to do with waterproofing? Do you do flood resistance? So, I wanted to ask you guys, what in waterproofing is it that you guys mainly cover?
Yeah, I mean, it's often confused. We don't tend to get involved with suspended traditional roofing, but buried roofs, green roofs, podium decks, that type of thing. But typically most of what we do is subterranean structures. Those are structures where we have higher external ground levels. So pretty much what we're looking to do is protect against water and moisture ingress into the internal space, making sure that the inhabitants are kept nice and dry.
Yeah, nice. I want to go back a little bit, and then I'll go back for both of you. Feel free to speak in whichever way or whoever's first. But how did you get into something like waterproofing? Like, for example, Chris, where did it all start for you? I don't know if it's something that you physically go into and I want to be a waterproof specialist, or did you just stumble into it?
Well, most people that I meet have a similar story to me. I mean, I fell into it pretty much by accident. I'd just left the Merchant Navy. I was looking for a job, and it just so happened to be that my father had a friend who had a damp proofing company. So I started working for those guys. I was installing chemical damp proof courses, doing woodworm treatments on timbers, doing dry rot treatments and such like. And at that time they were on the periphery of waterproofing. They wasn't really highly specialised, but then they got a very large contract in the Trocadero in Piccadilly Circus. Yeah. So that was really my first introduction to waterproofing. And compared to sort of like traditional damp proofing, drilling holes, injecting, I found it quite interesting. And obviously you also tend to get involved in larger, more interesting projects. Yeah. So that's really my inception into the industry.
Yeah, you talked about the Merchant Navy. How was just that experience?
Hey, the Merchant Navy, it was a great thing for a young man to do. So when I left school, I went to work for Queensway Warehouse. I hadn't been a good boy at school. Yeah. I spent all my time trying to find ways not to do the work instead of doing the work. A typical teacher comment was, Chris is an intelligent boy who spends all of his time finding out ways how not to do the work. If he would only apply himself, he would be able to do well.
Yeah.
So that was a typical teacher comment at the end of the year. So I went to work in Queensway Warehouse. I was a porter, moving beds around and other furniture, 3-piece suites and such like. And there I met a guy who had been in the Merchant Navy previously, and he told me all about sailing the 7 seas and going around the world and some of his experiences. So I came to London, I still remember it well, Tillard House, Blossom Street, went to the Merchant Navy establishment, managed to get myself an interview, done some tests, and I got into the Merchant Navy after going to sea school in Gravesend on the River Thames there, learning all about how to do rope work, wire work, safety, lifeboats, life rafts, etc., etc. I then moved on and circumnavigated the world on several occasions. Wow. So I've been to pretty much every continent. I've seen lots of cultures, lots of people. I've had lots of great experiences, and it was a really good thing for a young man to do.
Yeah. I think water's always been a part of your life, then, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, we've moved from salty water to groundwater, but yes, water has definitely been a feature of my life.
So, George, I wanted to ask, I know your dad was, if anybody doesn't know, of course, this is a father-daughter partnership, but how did it start for you? I know your dad was in waterproofing, so you couldn't actually go, but what's the story for you?
That's right. So my story's not as interesting as Chris's. I really loved hairdressing, and it's something that I really wanted to do when I was at school. My mum was a hairdresser previously, and I used to go around to houses with her and watch her do the hairdressing, and so I've always kind of had sort of a bit of a love for it. But even before that, I wanted to be an actress. Okay. I really wanted to be an actress. I loved drama at school, but I soon realised that's a tough industry to get into, and I sort of moved past that. I finished school. I went straight into an apprenticeship in hairdressing. I used to be a Saturday girl before that, and I used to go between my periods at school as well. They used to let me go and go and do a shift and then come back to the school. So I had a bit of a head start that way. So I went straight into apprenticeship, straight into work, and went to college. And I did really enjoy it. But then as sort of time went on, I just didn't feel like I was sort of getting out of it what I wanted. Okay. And again, I was sort of brought up with my dad, always in the car and listening to him, talking to people on the phone all the time and talking, more on the technical side. And I always found it quite fascinating. And then I sort of myself decided I need a career change. I don't think hairdressing is for me. So I sort of approached Dad and said, I want to come and join you, and I want to do the technical side. Yeah. And after lots of begging, he finally employed me. So that's how it all started. Yeah.
So, Chris, I wanted to ask you, how did Delta membranes come about then?
So pretty much I can probably continue the story. So I worked for a damp proofing company, and from there I went to work for a manufacturer who used to import sort of slurry waterproofing systems and such, like the Heidi system, as it was known back in those days. From that, I got an opportunity with a Norwegian company, who were, should I say, one of the first companies to introduce the cavity drain concept into the UK. The managing director of that company, a guy called John Ramsden, left, and he joined yet another company who were starting a waterproofing division. So I set up the waterproofing division of a company that these days are a competitor of mine. I worked there for 7 years. Thereafter, myself and my partner got the opportunity to work direct with the importer, or should I say the exporter. We ended up being the importer of the Delta system, because previously it was being rebranded.
Okay.
And that's about 30 years ago now. I had dark hair back in those days.
And I wasn't around.
So Georgia, even for yourself, when you spoke to your dad saying, I want to get involved in the business and the technical side, where did he first position you in the company?
So, I mean, as I said, I think because I came straight in saying I want to sort of do the technical side, he was very much sort of like, I don't think that's going to happen. And he knew I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And, you know, I think you wanted to help me out of changing careers. So he said, look, you can come in the office and basically, you know, start at the bottom, you know, do admin, take orders, you know, pick up the phone, whatever else. So that's where I started. I just started at the bottom, and I never sort of stopped wanting to do technical, and I just kept going and going until I got there. So yeah, that's sort of how I came into it. Was just answering phones, taking orders, doing some emails, things like that. So yeah.
I think the other thing I want to pick your brain on a little bit is when you, what was the mindset when you decided, you know what, or what triggered it to say, you know what, I don't want to continue with hairdressing and I want to move into a completely different field. The reason I ask is because there's so many people, youngsters, even elder people, who are just comfortable in what they're doing. And what's the mindset required to change?
I've always been ambitious. Even when I was hairdressing, my goal was to have my own salon. Like, I've always wanted to sort of have my own sort of business, or just do well in whatever I do. And I mean, with hairdressing, it is, you know, it's a lot of work. The hours aren't great. The money's not fantastic. But I'm quite a tall girl, so I'm about 6 foot. And I, at the time as well, was having lots of back problems and things like that, just from being tall, basically. So I've always gone to sort of like a chiropractor when I was growing. And just, you know, just the standing up constantly as well. I was suffering with, you know, back pain and whatever else. And I think I just was getting a bit miserable about it all. And I just thought, you know what, I think it's not for me, and I think I need to sort of move on to something else. So, yeah, and I'm glad I did. I'm glad that I done it. Because I do still have a bit of a love for it. So I'm glad that I did go down that route, but I'm glad that I changed because I feel like I'm better suited to what I'm doing now than what I was previously.
And what was the process of climbing up? What did you have to do? Did you have to do things outside of hours in terms of when you were answering calls, making orders? But to get to your senior specification manager, right?
Yeah.
That's a serious title. So how did you build up to that?
Yeah. So basically studying as well. You know, there's lots of good guidance documents out there, and reading data sheets, and looking at detailed drawings as well. And so to start with, it was more about getting good product knowledge, and understanding the products and what they do and how they work. And then from there, I started to learn about, so different types of construction. So then how would I apply this waterproofing system to this structure? And then Chris encouraged me a lot to look at drawings and understand them and how to read them. And then once I started to understand sort of how to read the drawings and sort of the detail aspect, and again, just sort of listening into his conversations and my other directors' conversations, and going to site with other technical colleagues, and going to other technical meetings of architects and structural engineers, and just really just trying to learn and absorb as much from everyone around me that I possibly could. I think you've got to be really interested in it, and if you're not interested in it, I think it's hard to keep up with it and keep learning, because things are always changing as well. You know, we've got like the new British standard now, and so documents and regulations are always changing. I just kept persevering, and I think it's just experience. As time goes by, the more jobs you do, the more sites you do and specifications, just the more your knowledge grows. And I would just say, if anyone else is wanting to get into technical, is just, keep learning off the guys that have got all that experience. That's sort of how I managed to climb my way up.
So Chris, I wanted to ask you, so from when you started Delta, and Delta Membrane's inception here in sort of the UK, to where it is now, and it's safe to say, well, for us, you've been a massive help, Delta Membranes has, and you're probably the best supplier we've ever had. And I think just the relationship we have. But how have you got it from the first day of Delta Membranes to where it is now? You're, I don't know, your global company? Yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, thanks for those kind words. Yeah, I mean, when we started, I remember reading a book, and it was about how to become a successful business. And back in those days, it said that you've got to pretend to be what you want to be, and one day you will be. So back in those days, we tried to make ourselves look like a big company, when in truth there was me and Brian Davison, and we were doing things like packaging tape and plugs and things like that in our living rooms on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
But we tried to put it out there that we were a big company. I mean, we had the knowledge, we had the products, and we were a really small fish. But over time, we grew, we took on more and more people, we got our brand out there. The brand is now, we see ourselves a bit like the Hoover of vacuum cleaners, or the Biro of ballpoint pens. And, we've made a good name for ourselves over time. But I think we've done that really by providing good customer service, having the right products for the right situation, always being able to adapt, be able to innovate. And really, when you think about what Delta do, it's a distress sale. Nobody wants, it's not like your nice double glazed windows where you can have silver handles and leaded lights or whatever. This stuff is unseen, it's problem solving stuff, so it's a distress sale. So what we're really doing more than anything is solving problems. And we've come to realise that your architects, your engineers out there, they've got 100 things to worry about. One of them is the waterproofing. And what they would really want you to do is take that problem away. And they need confidence. They need to know that you're the man, you're the company that can deal with their issues, so that they can worry about the other 99 things. So, we've really grown by having technical ability, by having the right products, and by continually innovating.
The innovation is something I definitely want to talk about in a few moments' time, because I know there's a few things that you've come out with recently, but we'll talk about that. I want to talk to Chris, you first, about your director of Delta Membranes, large company, huge company, well known, like you said, the Hoover of vacuum cleaners. But what's a day-to-day sort of? What is a day like in the through the eyes of Chris Burbridge?
Yeah, I think they call people like me a dirty-handed manager. I'm the kind of guy. I'm the kind of guy who doesn't sit in an ivory tower in his own office. When I sit in the office, I sit amongst our technical people. I still go to site. I still do CPD seminars. I still get involved in day-to-day issues and problems. So I kind of enjoy the business. I have looked at, retiring, moving away, and every time I think about it, it fills me full of fear. I think for some people, they've spent a lot of their life with great hobbies, fixing cars or mending clocks or whatever. Unfortunately or fortunately for me, depending on how you look at it, my hobby's always been waterproofing, and in the last sort of 30 years or so, Delta membrane systems. So if I take that out of my life, what will my most important thing to be in the morning? Is it to walk down to the newsagent to get the daily paper? I just don't think I'm ready for that yet. So yes, I mean, I've got a passion for it. I think there's the word. I kind of enjoy what I do, and that's probably why I'm still here.
Well, selfishly, I don't really want him to retire either. So I'm like, no, carry on,
going. But to be honest, my dad's the same. Like when it was lockdown, the first lockdown, we closed for a month, and in that month, he washed the driveway 5 times, and it probably didn't need washing in the first place. He changed every light bulb in the house, which didn't need changing. And then my mum said, please, can you guys just go back to work? Because this guy is driving me nuts. And then we opened and we carry on working. But I think that generation, I mean, if you told me to just go sleep for 4 days, I could hibernate for 4 days.
Oh, I could.
Not have to work or anything. I'll be more than happy.
Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just sit down, blanket,
Yeah.
and that's it. We'll be happy. But I think something of that generation still drives them to keep you going and to keep on working hard. And I'm hoping by about 60, I'm pinning my hopes on my son to tell him, become a professional footballer so I can retire early.
Oh, that's a good plan. I like that.
We'll see how that goes. Georgia, for you, what's it like as through the eyes of Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, again, I love what I do in terms of, sort of the waterproofing. And I too don't really have many hobbies as such. And so when someone says, what hobbies do you have? I'm like, my job. I don't know. I, obviously I like going out, socialising with my friends and, seeing my family. I like popping into London when I can. I like coming to the city, Shoreditch, Liverpool areas. Good to go about and socialise. I am now part of the Worshipful Company of Constructors, which are brilliant to be part of, and they're great people, and we do some really great functions, and they do sort of fundraising for charities and things like that. So that's sort of new to me that I joined this year. So that's something that I've been involved with, and I've been enjoying. But I can't say I'm amazingly interesting, but that's sort of me,
So what did you go through as a senior specification manager?
Yeah, so my sort of main focus is waterproofing design. So I normally are working more with the architects and structural engineers, basically to design the waterproofing and help with detailing. I do also work with sort of obviously our contractors and close customers. I do sort of quotations and specifications. That's sort of my area really, is more the design side. And then I go on site as and when I need to, sort of particularly London area, where sort of a lot of our jobs do tend to be, as well as, across the UK. That's my sort of day to day.
And what's the target for you? What's the sort of, where do you want to reach?
I don't know. I think I like the idea of maybe, running Delta one day. But, I mean, we'll see. Time will tell. I'm still young. So there's a lot of years yet ahead of me, and more experience for me to gain. I've been at Delta 8 years this December.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's, I've been there a while, but I think I've still got a lot more experience to gain. So we'll see. What about yourself? Do you think you will be sort of, running Elmpride?
One day, hopefully, again, one day. My dad always says, hopefully the boys take over.
There'll be us together.
Yeah, exactly.
They'll be retired.
But I really can't imagine my dad. He's on holiday right now, and when he's back, he's gonna want to know everything and want to be involved, and it's great. I'm more than happy for him to be. But he even sometimes now and again he wants to go out, get the trowel, do a bit of brickwork, climb up on some roofs or something, and just do all sorts of things, and it just keeps him busy. And I think he loves it. I think he's always done construction, and he just that's his thing. Yeah. And I think if he stays at home for more than a week, he'd drive my mum absolutely bonkers. Yeah. So she wants him to carry on working for as long as he can. So something I wanted to ask you, and we have it as well because we're a family-based business, and you're father and daughter. So what is that dynamic like?
Yeah, I mean, we get on well.
I've only murdered her twice so
far. True. Yeah, no, I think in general, we get on really well.
Yeah.
We have my mum always says our personalities are really quite similar.
Yeah.
So I think we do bounce off each other. But I think sometimes maybe because we are similar and we are father and daughter, obviously there are times where we probably get on each other's nerves. Yeah. Would you agree? But
well, I think, since, going back to what you was talking about in terms of COVID, I had a gymnasium at home, and when COVID hit, that was all the equipment was quickly sent out into the garage, and desks and chairs and printers and all the rest of it arrived. And to get us through COVID, it was basically myself and Georgia.
Yeah, we carried on working.
Instead of working in the office with, 15 people, suddenly it was just me and Georgia.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, we were confined together.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any marks on her or anything.
No, not you can see anyway. Yeah, no, but even during that, I think we got on really well, to be fair, considering we lived in the same house.
Yeah.
I've now moved out,
Yeah.
but we lived together, worked together. We were together 24/7,
Yeah.
basically. So, yeah.
We also do a certain amount of joint visits
Yeah.
in certain situations. You know, I think this week's been a bit unusual, but I mean,
We've done quite a lot together
We've
this
been out
week.
together every day this week.
Yeah, we do a lot of work together on the same projects as
Yeah.
well. So, you know, particularly the really big projects, where it is, you know, really helpful to have the
Yeah.
expertise of Chris there as well, or Dad, shall I say. Because, you know, he's got more experience.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there might be some things I might come across and go, I have an idea of what I want to do, but what do you think?
Yeah.
And I find that useful because I'm just always learning.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, she's right.
Yeah.
But I think she just
I
likes
like to
bounce
just-
it off of me
Yeah.
just to make sure.
Yeah, because, you know, I want to be the best I can be.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
and as well as going out with you on sites, I also go out a lot with Kevin as well, and he's very knowledgeable
Yeah.
as well. So I'm always just trying to learn as much as I can from everyone that's got the experience.
Yeah, we're quite lucky. I mean, Kevin, again, he's one of those guys. He even was the chairman of the BS 8102 review committee. So, you know, she's lucky. She's surrounded by a lot of very capable
Yeah.
technical people. So she's like a sponge. She absorbs it.
Yeah.
I try.
Well, I think that's a quality in itself, because like between me and my dad, when I first got into sort of the construction, and he knows as well, and I'll openly say, I think for the first 7 or 8 years I was a big waste of time and a big waste of space. I just did what I had to do, didn't really do any extra stuff in the background, didn't really pay attention, and I just kind of went with the emotions, and then kind of I understood that, hold on a minute, I'm complaining about everybody else, that dad has to be like this and the company should be run like this, but I'm not willing to change. And I think when the penny dropped a little bit, that, you know what, this guy's got 35, 40 years plus experience. He knows, he's seen a lot of things, and let me make the most of that. So then I think the mentality changed a little bit, and like we're the same now. Most of the time we're together on sites.
Yeah.
Sometimes if there's a lot, we divide and conquer. Just, I think, understanding what they have to give and being able to take that in is a big part. And like the same, we face challenges. We might not agree on certain things, but I think one thing I've learned from my dad is that if there's a disagreement, it's fine. It happens. Draw a line and just carry on.
Yeah.
It's just part and parcel of life, isn't it?
I think it comes with age as well, though, because I think when I was younger, if my mum and dad gave me advice, I would do everything in my power to sort of be like, no, you're
Yeah.
wrong, I don't want to listen to your advice and whatever else. Whereas
Yeah.
now, I want their advice and I value it because, you know, they've got so much life experience
Yeah.
as well. And I hate to say it, but majority of the time he's always
He's
right.
right.
So I see it as a good thing.
But, you know, to be fair, because in recent years we've diversified because of the convergence of the British standards in terms of gas proofing
Yeah.
and waterproofing. George has done a lot of studying on, you know, gas mitigation and such, like, you know, methane, VOCs, carbon dioxide, methane, etc. And, you know, I even asked Georgia for advice now.
Yeah.
So, you know, the whole thing's turned. So in terms of gas, and I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of old dogs and new tricks going
Yep.
on. So it's not a one-way street. So
Yeah.
when we're looking at gas projects, I'm often asking Georgia for advice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Record
works
this
both
and keep
ways.
it. That's it. Clip it, record it, keep it, and just
Yeah.
keep it on your phone anytime we need to play it. So I thought let's go a bit technical for people who are listening,
Yeah.
who are watching, that maybe don't understand. So there's a few things you mentioned, BS 8102. So what is that?
So BS 8102 was updated recently. It's the current British standard. The title of it is Protection of Structures Against Water from the Ground. So it's a lot of guidance. There's, 60 plus pages. It talks about all forms of structures, site investigations, but obviously waterproofing. It takes you through the different types of waterproofing, different types of structure, how they react. I mean, it's certainly true to say that if you mess up, someone is going to pull out the BS 8102 document and say, why did you not follow the guidance? So pretty much we're working towards things like the British Standard. We also take certain information from the Basement Information Centre, the Property Care Association, and obviously we've created a lot of our own technical resources too. So the British Standard is important to us. We're typically trying to make sure that both our own designs and the installations done by contractors such as yourself comply with the British Standard, and things like our British Board of Agreement certificates and such like, just to ensure obviously that the ultimate client, the guy who owns the building, gets a good experience. You know, let's be fair, the cheapest advertising is repeat work. You only get repeat work when you give good advice, you use good installers. You know, we also work in a guaranteed industry. So if we go wrong, it's going to cost us money, isn't it? You know, so if we put something forward that's incorrect, it doesn't work, it fails due to our bad design or your poor workmanship or bad quality of materials that we supply, you know, we're in trouble. You know, it's not like a car after 3 years, you know, you're on your own. You know, with a waterproofing system, you know, it's a minimum 10-year, between 10 and 30 years liability. And on some of the gas stuff we're doing, we're looking at 60 years.
60 years.
So,
minimum 60 for the gas industry,
So, you know, it's important in our industry to get things right. You don't get a second chance.
No.
Well, you do get a second chance, but it's a costly second chance.
Yeah, definitely. After all the finishes are in.
Yes.
Absolutely. You got to rip all the finishes out. Do it again. You can spend more money on removing and replacing the finishes than you can on the waterproofing system. And when you look at some of the high-end buildings that we're dealing with, I mean, you know, we've only got to walk around this area, for example, and we can point out a lot of buildings where our system is incorporated. You know, it's funny, my wife, when I drive through London, she makes fun of me because I usually say, yeah, we did that one, we did that one, we did that one. And it's a bit of a running joke. But we do protect a lot of high-end property.
So, Georgia, what are the different types of waterproofing?
So you got type A, B and C. So type A is barrier protection, so whether that's on the external envelope of a structure or the internal, which is what we call the negative side, and the exterior is what we call the positive side. Then you've got your type B waterproof concrete, which is known as structural integral, and that's all about the minimum crack width. So whether that's sort of it'll be designed by the structural engineer to either 0.3 or 0.2 for like a crack. For like a liquid retaining structure, for example, like a swimming pool. And then you've got your type C cavity drain membrane system, which is, you know, what we're sort of mainly known for, which effectively is like a water management system. So basically any water that does come through the structure, we can manage it and evacuate it out of the building, just keeping the internal environment dry.
And is there any sort of different specifications of how somebody wants their building finished?
So you got grades 1, 2 and 3, and that's recently changed, hasn't it?
So there are environmental grades as well. There used to be 4 grades in the old standard. Now there are, well, there's still 4 grades because one of the grades split into 2.
So we've now got 1A, 1B, 2 and 3. Whereas previously it was basically 1, 2 and 3, and then there was sort of, you know, got a caveat of what used to be 4, which was more to do with archive, and that was more to do with the ventilation side, and so it was more sort of, we had grades 1, 2 and 3, but that has recently changed slightly as well in our standard.
So I wanted to ask, I just doing a bit of research, and I think we've spoken before about, and you sent an email about women in waterproofing, and I did want to touch on being a lady in a very heavily male-dominated industry. So maybe if you want to talk about first, what is Women in Waterproofing?
So Women in Waterproofing is sort of a networking group that I set up, or I don't know now, maybe sort of 4-5 years ago or something like that. And basically the aim was to encourage more women into it, and also for the women that was already in the industry to sort of bring us together, whether they're from other competitors or suppliers. It's all inclusive, you know. It's not about, it doesn't matter to myself if you're from a competitor. It's more of a case of we're all women in the same industry, let's come together and you know, and network and sort of talk about our sort of daily struggles, if you like, or what we've found or what we can do to improve, and how we can, like I said, ultimately I'd like to encourage more women into it. I mean, recently Delta have just employed Gemma, who's just come on to our technical team, and she is going to basically be doing what I done, and that's sort of working her way up and sort of starting at the bottom. So it's, again, just encouraging more people into it. Yeah.
And how was your journey being a lady, a woman in a heavily construction and construction related industries, all male dominated?
Yeah, I mean, so it's 99% of the time it's fine. You know, you don't really have an issue. There have been times, and there still can be times, I think it happened more when I first started, you know, there are some people that don't want to talk to a female and they want to talk to a male. So there have been times where it's sort of, I've had to basically pass it on, and they've said the exact same thing that I've said, but because it's come from a male, it's like, okay, I'm fine. So there are sort of that aspect to it, which actually, talking to sort of the other ladies, part of the Women of Waterproofing, they've, you know, found the same things. Then there's sort of going on site aspect, where it's a case of, you know, you turn up and it's a bit like, what's a lady doing here? And so, but I think, to be fair, once you talk to them and they know that you know what you're talking about, I think they just respect the knowledge, you know, aspect of it. And to be fair, there's been customers that haven't wanted to maybe deal with me to start with, and then once we've actually worked together, sort of won them over, and they, you know, they don't care that I'm then a woman. So I've, you know, found all different sort of layers to it.
And it's getting better?
Yes, I think so. I get it less and less now. As I said, I think more, because I think, even in the past 8 years, there are more women in general that are entering the construction industry, whether it's roofing, scaffolding, carpentry, whatever else. And I do see that a lot on sort of LinkedIn and things like that. There are more women entering construction in general. And I think everyone's sort of going with the times and sort of realising that it isn't just for men now, and that others can also join in.
And if somebody listening or watching wanted to get in touch or join Women of Waterproofing, how would they go about doing that?
So get in touch with me. Mainly it's sort of on LinkedIn. So if you've got LinkedIn, that's sort of an easy avenue. If you find me on LinkedIn, Georgia Burbridge, and we can have a chat and add you on. And then we do sort of quarterly meet-up sort of thing, generally in London, because we're all mainly around this sort of area. The last one we done, we had a nice sort of meal and a network and a catch-up. And then we done something fun. We went to Junkyard Golf and, you know, had some drinks. And, if you want to get involved, then please do get in touch for sure.
So, Chris, I want to ask you a question. You probably, in your life and with business and stuff, you had to pay a lot of attention to details. But the one thing I have with waterproofing is details. It's very important to not miss out any key or very minute details. So how important is it to really be focused and screwed on when you're designing a waterproofing system or specifying some products for really high-end properties?
Yeah, I think the old term, the devil is in the detail, rings true, doesn't it? You know, if you're doing a great big wall, it's the same, isn't it? But it's the junctions, it's the joints, it's the bits that you can't get to. You know, a lot of architects and engineers are great at what they do, and they tend to think that if they can put it on their drawing, you can build it, you can waterproof it. but quite often you can't, you know. So they'll put their black line showing the position of the waterproofing, but again, you know, you can't actually get access to it, bearing in mind we're building underneath existing houses, we're going under gardens these days, we're going down 2 stories, 3 stories, 4 stories. You know, there's a lot of interactions where old meets new, so you've got difficult construction joints, and the basement itself has become more complicated. You know, in the old days it was a Victorian existing basement, just go in there, waterproof it. Nowadays, I mean, some of these iceberg basements are like leisure centres.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your swimming pool, you've got your golf simulator, you know, you've got your spa area, you know, your plunge pools, your, you know, I've even done bowling alleys. A famous racing driver, his father's got like a 2-lane bowling alley in his basement. I even went to one where there's a slide, so you can actually go from the kitchen and slide down and end up in the basement, believe it or not.
One day we'll have that.
That was a funny story, actually. I asked the architect, I said, that's really unusual ducting coming through your plant room and ending up in your basement. He said, oh, he said, it's a slide. I said, what? Oh, they've got kids. He went, no. He said, these people, they're bankers. They're in their 50s. The lady of the house just wants to be able to slide down in the basement. And that's another thing, you know, people do strange things with basements.
Yeah.
If you talk to a lot of property experts, you know, your high-end estate agents and such like, you know, they'll tell you that the basement is the leisure area. It's the area where they bring their friends on the weekend, you know, come down and, you know, let's have a play in the basement. So you name it, nightclubs, bowling alleys, we've got everything in those basements.
Yeah.
Also practical stuff as well, you know, just in the smaller houses, you know, your typical SW6 house, that's more just accommodation. So, you know, you've got your extra couple of bedrooms, or you know, they'll move the kitchen from upstairs to downstairs or whatever. You know, everybody needs more space.
So previously we talked about COVID and everybody's experiences, but Delta membranes, a heavy part of your work is, along with specifying, is supplying up and down the country, and you supply abroad, internationally?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing an interesting one at the moment in Saint-Tropez.
Oh, nice.
Interesting from the point of view that it's the former house of George Michael.
Wow.
The singer.
Yeah.
It's a funny story. I was there on holiday, and I got a call from the guy on site, the site manager, and he said, I've got this job in the south of France, he said, and your products have been specified and I need some help. So I said, whereabouts in the south of France? He said, Saint-Tropez. I said, okay. I said, give me the address. He gave me the address. I said, right, I'll see you in 30 minutes. So that was quite amazing, you know, of all the times to be in the exact location when you get a
customer service.
Exactly. We've made
well,
it.
you know, we've got these people strategically placed all around the world. You know, we're like the AA with a fifth emergency service.
When you need us, we're there.
Yeah.
But no, that was just one of those amazing
Yeah.
coincidences. You know, most of our work is in the UK. We have been involved last year. We've signed an NDA, so we can't talk about it. But probably the largest building in Europe, one of Georgia's, funnily enough.
Yeah, nice.
And for a tech company that was on the continent in Belgium. But as I say, we've signed an NDA,
Yeah,
so
classic.
perhaps we shouldn't say too much about it. But that was our biggest job this year, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2000 and
Yeah, it's one of those ones that, again, I was working with the architects, and, you know, it takes a while to get all the details together and right, and then once that was all done, it was like, okay, fine, we're ready for the material. So I think I've been working on it, well, I think a bit before COVID, so quite a while, but obviously, you know, these things take a little while to materialise. So, yeah, no, that's been interesting.
Yeah.
I like doing some of the international ones. They're always quite fun, aren't they? They're always a bit different.
You get to travel out there.
Not often. I mean, you know, because of COVID, we wasn't able to go out there. But
let's talk about some of the positives, though. You know, let's be fair, you know, we do a lot of Zoom meetings and
Yeah.
Teams meetings. So, you know, the positive things that have come out of COVID are that we're not always having to get in the car or on
Yeah.
the train, get to the architect's office. You know, quite often we can sit there, we can have a meeting. So, you know, better for the planet. We're not burning fossil fuels, are we?
Yeah.
More hours in the day as
more
well.
hours in the day. You know, less time looking through the windscreen on the car,
Yeah.
or you know, looking out through the windows on the train. So there have been positives. COVID was tough. I think one of the biggest things was obviously the uncertainty.
Yeah.
You know, no one knew what was coming. Not just the disease, but obviously the business. You know, what's going to happen? We've got all these people. We've got all these staff. Will we be able to afford to pay the staff?
Yeah.
You know, prior to all the government announcements and furlough schemes and such like, you know, we've got a lot of staff, and you know, some of these people have been with us over 20 years, and suddenly you think, you know, what are we going to do? You know, what can we? How can we keep these people?
Yeah.
You know, but now obviously, as it's all panned out, there were some positives that have come out of COVID, new ways of working. You know, I wouldn't like to go through it again in my
No.
lifetime.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of stress, a lot of worry. I had black hair before COVID started. And now it's all grey. The stuff that's left that I haven't pulled out. But yeah, no, there have been some positives,
Yeah.
and I think that's life in general, though, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, there's always something good comes out of something bad.
Yeah.
Do you remember during the first lockdown, the weather was just amazing?
Yeah.
And I think it was as well, just as well because no one was travelling and,
Yeah.
you know, using fuel and whatever else. And it just seemed like a whole different weather, didn't it,
Yeah.
that year?
I think we saw there was a picture going around of, I think it was India. I don't know if it was Delhi or Mumbai,
Yeah.
pre-COVID and after COVID, and just what you could see, I think, from someone took a really high shot up, and just the fact that for such a long time pollution had just stopped,
Yeah.
and it was just a lot more clearer, and it was a
Yeah.
I
it was
mean, there
good.
were dolphins in the canals in Venice.
Venice,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And it just makes me wonder if we shouldn't all sort of like, you know, every year for 2 weeks just close the world
Yeah,
down
yeah.
and let the world breathe
Breathe a
again
little
for a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and you know, before we obviously restart. That part of things were quite refreshing. You know, good for certain aspects of nature.
Shows the impact, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that we all have on the planet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
To be fair, I was probably, you know, you don't really pay too much attention. You hear about on the news and whatnot, but then once you research a bit more and you see things a bit more, you actually understand
Yeah.
there are a few things going on that we need to probably try just be aware of.
Yeah, definitely.
Towards the planet. So, how was it from a supplying point of view, COVID?
It came again with a lot of problems, obviously. But we stayed open during the pandemic.
Yeah.
One of the we did consider closing, but if you can imagine, a lot of what we do, we also do pumps for keeping basements dry, but also, if you can imagine, a lot of basements, they don't have gravity drainage available, so people's sewerage gets pumped out.
Yeah.
So had we have closed, you know, people potentially wouldn't have been able to use their toilets. We could have had people with flooded basements and such like. So we felt a sense of responsibility to remain open during the COVID period. And I think really for us it was also a good distraction.
Yeah.
And also from a business point of view, it turned out to be a good thing, because whilst our turnover had decreased significantly, we still had some turnover. So, you know, we could pay the staff, keep everybody happy. Because, as I say, to begin with, before the furlough came in, there was this few weeks of uncertainty where we were thinking, you know, I mean, we stopped taking, the directors all stopped taking wages instantly so that we could continue to pay the staff. But then obviously the furlough scheme came in, and we had a certain amount of people that were at home not working. Then we had a few people in the office spaced out in different parts of the office, not in contact with each other. You know, all the biosecurity measures and the hand washing and the separation and so on and so
Screens,
forth, screens, you name it. But, you know, we came through.
Yeah. That's good to hear. I'm going to bring up the B word, Brexit. You can tell me if you were a Remainer or you wanted to leave. But how has Brexit had an impact?
Well, Brexit has brought a lot of challenges. If you can imagine, we're a company that trades with Europe in both directions. Obviously, we supply Ireland, both north and south, and we also import products from Germany. It has brought with it a layer of red tape, things like customs clearances. The other problem I think that we had was no one was really prepared for it. I think the Europeans are also in a bit of a position where Brexit can't go too well. If Brexit goes too well, there could be other countries that follow suit. So they can't make it too easy for us because it wouldn't be a good example to, maybe Italy as a good example, or Greece or whatever, who haven't done so well. I mean, the euro and the Eurozone economy has been good for the Northern Europeans, but it hasn't, the Southern Europeans haven't fared so well. Personally, not that I'm the world's greatest economist, should I say, but I think the problem is the currency, the euro. It's one size fits all. I've always been interested in currency since my Navy days, and I've always, as a kid, looked at the lira going up to 3,000 and back down to 1,800, and I always wondered why it happened and such like. And really, I came to the conclusion as a young man that when a country has problems, its currency tends to devalue. But I also recognise that when its currency devalues, it starts a cycle, because suddenly it's cheap to go to Italy, isn't it? And it's cheap to buy Italian sofas and Italian products and such like. So then what happens is it stimulates their economy becomes stronger, and their currency starts to rise again. The problem these days with the euro, it's one size fits all. So if Germany and Holland and Belgium, the northern European countries, are doing rather well, you've got a strong euro with some weak southern European economies mixed in. So their currency can't devalue. So you've got a country like Italy, for example, that's not faring very well economically, that's got a very strong currency. So I think the biggest problem with the Eurozone is the actual currency rather than the other alliances, the intertrading and freedom of movement and such like. So if I could change one thing about Europe, I think I'd give Greece the drachma back, I'd give Italy the lira back, and so on and so forth, because I think that's the problem for the southern European countries.
So what was it like, sort of, I can't remember the day, was it in December? The day Brexit actually meant to happen. But what was preparation like for Delta?
Over to you, really. I didn't really get involved in it.
Well, we needed to mitigate the impact, so we did things like, we were told that there was going to be queues at border control, queues at customs and such like. So we actually doubled our stocks. Okay, so we made sure that we had a mountain of stocks just to make sure that it was seamless. And then, even though we had the stock and we didn't need any material, we were doing test purchases, trying to get ourselves ready for, the customs declarations and the various forms and the extra red tape that had been incorporated into our lives. So, we managed to get through it quite seamlessly. I think we're quite lucky because we had the storage and we had the buying power to enable us to do that. Maybe some companies that didn't have the cash flow, is maybe a little bit more difficult if you're working hand to mouth, as it were. But in our case, we sort of pretty much put a mountain of stock in, and it did kind of like manage to level most of the peaks and troughs out for us. So yeah, Brexit has been no picnic for us. and it has added, issues, problems, even stuff. I had a few pallets going to Ireland just last week. Now, normally, within 4 or 5 days, that's sitting with my customer. It took 3 weeks because it got stuck at customs. Because suddenly customs randomly sort of say, okay, put those pallets over there, and we will obviously inspect them when we're ready. So it can cause issues.
So I thought, remember we talked previously at the beginning when you said innovation is a big part of Delta, and I wanted to move on to kind of the innovation side, and obviously I think in 2017 we had the big tragedy that was Grenfell, brought into light how buildings were made, construction was really brought into the spotlight, and a lot of people found out that things weren't fit for purpose. So how is like from there we had a lot of people, a lot of different products now coming out. So what effect did that have, and what has Delta kind of done? Because I know you got a few interesting things out there to really help those kind of situations.
Grenfell was a bit of a wake-up call for companies such as our own. Suddenly you've been putting these components into buildings for sort of 30 years. And whilst our products aren't really dangerous, because usually they're hidden behind plasterboard and such like, but you can never say never. We have things like electrics quite often running behind plasterboard, so there is always the potential for ignition, for fire. Another thing that you've got to think about with basements is, by their very nature, they're surrounded by soil. So sometimes it's not like a normal building where you've got lots of fire exits and you've got lots of ground floor windows that you could scramble out of. In a basement, on the other side of that wall is not a window, it's soil. So we had to think hard about it. We tried and successfully developed a new range called Delta MS Fire. So it's now got a Class B rating, so pretty much there's videos on our website. You can put a blowtorch to it and you can leave the blowtorch on it and it won't burn, it doesn't drip, it doesn't give off noxious gases, etc, etc. So it makes things incredibly safe. But we didn't stop there. We also looked at things like balconies and terraces and such like, because bearing in mind, Grenfell was the external cladding, wasn't it? And the insulation materials and such like. So we've got other products in our range, things like roof guard again, that give us the Class A/B type ratings, because again, if flame goes up the outside of the building, it's going to be things like, the balcony, the terrace. If there's anything that is flammable, it's going to add to the fire load. So we've spent a lot of time and effort, but typically as well at Delta, we always get our products not just manufactured, but we also like to get them approved. So we took it to the British Board of Agreement. We gave them a lot of test data. They did further tests on these products and such like. So, you can't invent a product today and bring it to market tomorrow. It's quite a long process because of all the testing that you have to do. So, if we came up with a concept today, we probably wouldn't be able to get it onto the market for at least 2 years. But, so MS Fire's been a bit of a game changer. Also commercially, obviously we did it as a response to the Grenfell disaster. But by the same token, it's given us a commercial edge. Because, let's be fair, if you're a specifier, this stuff's like £1 a square metre more. If you're doing 1,000 square metre basement, that's another £1,000. £1,000, is nothing compared to, obviously, life, is it?
Of course.
So it's just one of those things that specifiers like to specify it. Because obviously it's adding that level of safety that we've never had before. So, the need for innovation, obviously, we don't always know what those needs are, and sometimes it takes a Grenfell to or for people like us to recognise that there is a need to improve your products and such like.
I think Delta are a driving force for innovation. I think they always have been. I mean, you've also created the 8800, which is a cavity drain membrane that also complies with BS 8485, which is the ground gas standard for methane and CO2. So we now also make a membrane that can deal with methane, CO2, as well as radon, etc. So I would say, you know, from being with Delta for 8 years, even since I've been there, the different products that they've come out with, even sort of like the high-level alarms and battery backups and how they've changed them, as well as other products that they've brought in, like pre-applied systems like our Delta Amphibia, which is self-sealing, self-healing, the cavity drain membranes, the MS500 Fire, the AC800. It's all products that, you know, is just innovation, and the technology is always evolving and changing. And I think Delta always sort of seem to be at the front of that, even with sort of flood resilience. We've done the BRE flood house, that was amazing, and helping you know, flood relief with the up in Cumbria and things like that. Obviously that was, you know, extremely bad, and since then we've done loads of flood resilience, helping people get back into their homes, and you know, if it does occur again, it's easier for them to get back in once, you know, things are removed and sanitized and whatever else. So I think the insurers like it as well, because obviously it saves on cost as well. So I think we're always coming out with new things, really, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some new stuff coming in the pipeline.
On to the next already.
So that's all coming, you know, and we've been looking at technology and how we can make basement waterproofing safer through technology. You know, so getting a push notification on your phone, for example. So, you know, if you have a problem in your house, you get a notification on your phone. If you want to see what's happening in your sump, you can log in, have a quick look. You can tell if your sump's worked today or if it hasn't, or if you've got high water, or you can find out how often it's worked or functioned and such like. And we've found that a lot of, even though some of this technology is available, the reason a lot of people don't take it up is because of the cost. You know, if you've got a few sumps in your basement, you may be paying £24 a month just to monitor them. So we're coming up with an app where you'll be able to monitor for free. And that'll be available to you, the installer, us to the manufacturer, the homeowner. You know, so everything is going to be right in front of your eyes. And the thing with problems is, it's a bit like most problems in your life. If you know you've got a problem, you've got a chance of resolving it. If you've got to wait until you're paddling in water to find out you've got a problem, it's too late. The damage is already done. So there's a lot of that technology coming on down the line. Those products are in development, coming into the final stages. But as I say, those things do take time, because it's not just inventing the products, it's not just producing the products, it's all the testing that you have to do.
So we've talked a lot today about if you're floating in water, or you're sort of knee deep in water, it's a bit too late. And we talked a lot about high-end finishes, and even if it's not a high-end finish, if somebody's got a finished property and there's water knee height, there's a problem. So that obviously means there's a failure in the waterproofing, or there's a failure somewhere. Do a lot of these cases then end up going to court or getting really sour between installers, contractors, clients, suppliers? How is that looking?
Well, they can do. I think one of the problems is a lot of clients, they are not really interested in the waterproofing aspect. They're more interested in, you know, have they got the latest appliance, or you know, the latest golf simulator or such like. And sometimes they miss the idea that unless your waterproofing is intact, serviceable, functional, guaranteed, that potentially all these wonderful things that you put in your basement are going to obviously be spoilt. As we know, water is very damaging. You know, you've only got to watch the TV after there's been a flood or something like that, and if you can imagine, a subterranean structure, a basement, is always susceptible to flooding because you've got groundwater, surface water and such like. So if you don't get it right, I mean, people cut corners with all kinds of things. People cut corners in construction. Everybody's trying to do something cheaper, you know, so somebody gives a quote for 20,000, the next guy wants 18, the next guy wants 16, and if you're not careful, something has to give. So sometimes, you know, I've seen it before, you'll see one quote for 40,000, one quote for 35,000, and one quote for 15,000. You know, and sometimes we'll look at it and go, hold on a minute, you can't even buy the products for that. So
should be a red flag, isn't it?
So it should be a red flag. It's impossible. So I think it's a case of doing your diligence, doing your homework. You know, if it's really cheap, why is it really cheap? Are they using a fully bona fide system? Are they experienced? Have they been doing this for a lot of time? You know, is it a new company? You know, have they been going for 10, 15, 20 years? You know, because let's be fair, a lot of the guarantees, you know, people come along and say, yeah, here's a 10-year guarantee, but it's only as good as their company. And if they fail, you've got no guarantee. So it can be a bit of paper, and a bit of waste paper for that matter. So really it's about checking who you're dealing with, check the credentials of the manufacturer. You know, look at us, for example, look at what you're being offered. I mean, you know, just yesterday I had a complaint about one of our systems. So I asked the client to send me photographs, which is something that I do as standard now. I used to run out to the job and try and find out what's gone wrong, and I find that it's not even my products being used. And that was the case yesterday. So, you know, the client's in dispute. They've told the client that they're an installer of ours. So I've said, send me the photographs, I'll have an initial look, and then obviously, if appropriate, I'll make a visit to site. They send me the photographs, it's not even my materials. You know, so it's a false economy.
Not everything's like for like as well. It might look the same, but it doesn't mean it's manufactured the same, tested the same, you know.
The good thing about having the brand name is what I said to you earlier, which is like, you know, you're the Hoover of vacuum cleaners, you're the Biro of ballpoint pens. On the downside, people say, oh, you know, yes, we're going to Delta your house for you. But they don't always really mean that they've used Delta. So the client thinks he's got Delta.
Getting the best system.
But when the photos come through, it's not really the Delta product. So basically, I just said to the lady, I said, look, it's not our product. Suggest you go back to your installer, find out whose product it is, and then speak to the appropriate manufacturer. So there's always people trying to save a few pounds here and there. Is it a false economy? Well, yes, I think it is. You know, because if the waterproofing doesn't work, you can put the best kitchen you like down there. You know, when it's floating in water, it's not going to be the best kitchen anymore.
No.
So Giorgio, with that as well, as a sort of senior specification manager, do you find the challenge of making people understand that waterproofing is really important to what they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well with the cavity drain membrane system as well is, again, I think some clients don't like the aspect that the sump and pump has to be maintained sort of regularly, sort of yearly, ideally. And so a lot of the time it's a case of, oh, can we just take this, you know, straight into the manhole? And it's the answers are no, because of back pressure, smells behind the system, and even rodents. You know, we have seen where rodents have come through and chewed through the membrane. So especially in London, if you can imagine. So it's all about the risks and weighing it up, and just kind of educating that's like, look, you know, if you cut corners on your waterproofing, as Chris said, you could have the best kitchen or you know, whatever it is, but if the waterproofing fails, then you're going to have to start all over again, and you're not talking sort of 30 grand, you're probably talking maybe hundreds of thousands. It depends, obviously, on the scale of the job and what they've put in there and whatever else. So it's just, always trying to educate that, look, it is important. And I think the problem is, as Chris said, is that because it's not seen, the client's not so interested in it, that, they want to save on costs, which I completely understand. But same with gas as well, actually. I find sometimes, they might be in a really high radon area, and it's a case of, oh, well, we don't really want to incorporate that as well because that's extra money. And it's kind of saying, look, radon is a killer. It kills, I think, on average in the UK, 1,100 people a year with lung cancer. That's just from radon. And so it's also, I've, had it recently trying to educate, look, we're talking life here. It's extremely important. It is trying to educate people when it comes to waterproofing and gas that, look, these are important factors, and don't cut corners, just best practice, do it properly and do it once. And hopefully you'll never have to do it again, as long as it's, maintained as it should be. Then that's the goal.
How about our favourite phrase?
What's that?
Value engineering.
Yeah.
Value engineering.
So what happens is Georgia will do a nice specification. She'll spend a lot of time. She'll get it all perfect.
Yep.
That then goes out to the architect, the engineer, and then the QS and the client will often come back and say, we want to value engineer this. Now, value engineering is a code term for we want to cut corners.
Cut costs and
So cut costs, cut corners. But what they really want is they still want you to say that it's guaranteed.
I'm sure you find this all the time.
All the time.
So they still expect the full guarantee, but they want to cut corners. So the stock response is, hey, look, you can cut out whatever you want, but obviously it's then not our design. It's not covered by our PI. It's not our responsibility, and also our registered installers won't be able to give you a guarantee. But if that's what you want to do, it's on your own head. 9 times out of 10, they see sense and they do the job properly. But obviously, there's always that 1 in 10 that doesn't listen, and the consequences quite often are a failure. So the word value engineering is a big red flag.
And I think that's something that, just from experience, we get it with construction, but actually, so my wife used to have her own cake business, and she used to make cakes, and for some time I was helping her a little bit now and again on the weekends, and I used to see some of the messages she'd get, and she'd get a message of a picture of like a 8-tier wedding cake, and I want all the designs, the 3D models and all sorts, but I only want it for 4 people. And I want it, and my budget is only £15. And it's just racking their brains. It doesn't make sense. It can't be done. But they're so adamant that, no, this is what we want, and I want it in 15 quid, and I want it for all of just 5 people or 4 people. So value engineering is a cutting costs and cutting corners, and we understand the whole the landscape of it being very expensive, and you're probably doing up your house, but getting it right first time is very important, so there's no problems in the future.
It is
cheaper in the long run, definitely.
100%.
You do it once, you do it right. So, as I say, it is a false economy, but it's one of our favourite terms. As soon as we hear, oh, we want a Zoom meeting, we want to talk about value engineering, we know we're in for a difficult afternoon, don't we?
So I wanted to, so you guys, you've been dealing with waterproofing, and if you don't know already, hopefully listening to this, people understand actually water is not something to be messed around with. We know the big scale things of tsunamis and floods and stuff, but even minute amounts of water can cause problems. But because you've been in the industry for such a long time, so one each, tell me an interesting story about water that you've seen on a job that you couldn't even believe it, or you couldn't even understand it.
Well, one of the funniest ones I remember, I mean, one of our directors, David, before he was our director about 20 years ago or something, he asked me to come to a site, and it was ICF, insulated concrete formwork, where you get the 2 layers of polystyrene with the concrete infield in the middle, and it was leaking, so there was a bit of a rickety old ladder. He went down and I stayed up the top. And the real interesting thing about that one was the guy, for his job, he made canoes, and the basement was that bad he was actually putting the canoes down there to test the canoes. The basement had failed so badly, he was putting the canoes down to test the water tightness of the canoes. So when it goes wrong, it can go really wrong. But I mean, I've seen people drill through a floor and you've got something like a fountain coming out of it. You know, there'd be, you know, stick it in Hyde Park somewhere, they'd call it a water feature. But yeah, I've seen some. I mean, I've seen, you know, let's be fair, the overriding majority of jobs go off perfectly well and you know, last forever. But the thing I've always said is, you can do 100 good jobs, you never ever hear from them again. It's just me going past telling the wife, yeah, done that one, done that one, done that one. You get one bad job and you will hear about it forever and ever. And when there's a problem, it's like this. Everybody's pointing. It's the manufacturer, it's the design, it's the contractor, it's
the blame game.
The blame game is incredible.
Yeah, always.
But as I say, I've seen strange stuff. I've seen membranes put on back to front. I've seen, I've seen, I've pretty much seen everything over the years. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think it's the guy on telly, who said, like, he used to do one of these crime programs. And at the end he'd say, crime is very rare, sleep well. And it's a bit like that with waterproofing, the vast majority go extremely well, but you only need one bad one. And that one bad one, let's be fair, for a contractor, for example, one bad job can wipe his profit out for the whole year. So, as I say, that's why it's better off using people that really understand what they're doing. If basement waterproofing was that easy, everybody would be doing it. So it is really a niche specialist area of construction.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How about you, Georgia?
Yeah, just joints under pressure, like construction joints, where there's such a high bar of pressure of water coming through at one time, where the only thing you can do is use like a resin injection, like a really fast acting. We've got one called IN7, and I think it reacts in sort of 27 seconds or something really fast. So yeah, it looks like there's fountains coming through your basement structure, and whether that's because it's not been designed correctly, it can also be down to the structure and not locking down the structure as well. Before your waterproofing goes in place, it's something that we always advocate, isn't it? Is locking down your structure to prevent the amount of water coming through. And then putting our waterproofing systems in to then deal with, it thereafter. So I've seen some sort of high bar of pressure coming through at one time and having to waterproof it. In some of the videos that you get sent as well, and you think, wow.
But I mean, some of them difficult jobs are rewarding when you resolve them.
They are.
I can imagine,
when you turn up and there's water shooting out of a construction joint, you come along, you put your packers in, you inject into it, and you've solved.
Everyone's impressed.
You've solved the problem, and everybody's looking, and it looks like a piece of black magic. And suddenly, you've resolved that problem.
There was that roof. Remember that project we went on earlier this week, and there was that roof, and they had loads of roofing people out, didn't they?
That's right.
And in the end, they used our product to sort of MS Flex Foil, it's called. And they managed to fix it, but how long were they trying to fix it?
So they were trying to fix it. They were trying to fix it for years. I mean, we're talking about a real high end. We're up in Ascot. Each apartment is like £2.5–3 million. There's a leisure centre downstairs, and they're built. They look like ships. These things. So when you look at these buildings, there's one new one and an old one, and they've copied the old one. But it's like Art Deco stuff as well, and it's in this beautiful country estate. But they've tried resolving their roof problems, and they got quoted hundreds of thousands to take the roof off of this building. And our contractor managed to deal with it for £20,000, and he's the biggest hero going. So,
I think they were in awe of him with that.
When you get, another one is something like our KB Flex 200, for example. You sort of like, got water shooting out of a cable duct, and somebody comes along with a mastic gun and just goes, and suddenly
It's
it's sealed. So those are kind of like the exciting impact products where you can sort of like show a bit of magic, but unfortunately a lot of it is, you know, putting the hard yards in, you know, sort of like mundane, boring stuff. But there are some exciting sort of quick fix type situations that
as they say, not all superheroes wear capes.
Yeah, that's it.
So there's something different that we would do on the podcast to getting away from the waterproofing. I asked you guys to bring in an object that meant something to you. So what did you bring in today?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So mine's actually this necklace.
Okay.
So it was a necklace that my nan bought for me. Yeah. She's now not with us, but it's got stars in the centre, and she always used to call me her star. And so nice. I always think of her. So yeah, it's sort of like a treasured possession of mine.
So I bought this in, and the reason I bought this in
Hold it up.
is because, like I said before, I was in the Merchant Navy. This is the British Merchant Navy flag. The nickname for it is the Red Duster. And I feel that when I went in the Merchant Navy, not only did it give me a lot of worldly experience, I got to meet a lot of cultures and different people from around the world, made a lot of lifelong friends and such like, but it shaped my life. And it taught me a lot of value, certain amount of discipline that I needed as well, because of the training that I went through. So I'm still, parts of various Merchant Navy groups. Being on the water, not stopping it, is my passion. So I just thought I'd bring my Merchant Navy flag. I have this up at home in my man cave on the wall. But I just thought it kind of epitomises, my early life, because I feel that my early life was what's formed what I am today. So,
and just touching on that, we called it the Brick by Brick podcast, and bricks notoriously a good load bearing walls and for foundations and stuff. So, what is that one key quality that you've gained from all your life experience, and it's for both of you, that is really kept you in good stead and really got you where you are now?
Well, I think unfortunately you kind of learn from a lot of your mistakes, don't you? And I think that differentiates you between, and the way I see life is, and one of my life's philosophies is, the reason they put rubbers on pencils and bumpers on cars is because people make mistakes. And I think as long as you learn from your mistakes, and as long as you are generous, when I say generous, it doesn't always mean being generous with money. Generous with your time, as long as you're kind and considerate. And again, my mother always instilled in me, the only way you ever get respect is to give it. So respect everybody. So, I've kind of like listened to my forefathers, if you want to use that term. So that's really the one bit of advice I would give to, and I do give to my kids. One of them sitting here. If you want to gain respect, you have to give it. You got to treat everybody, no matter whether they're sort of serving you in the restaurant or they're your big boss director. You've got to treat everybody the same.
I think just be kind as well and treat people how you want to be treated. It's sort of just mirroring what you said, really. I mean, one thing my nan always used to say to me is, you can do anything you put your mind to. And so I've always thought, basically how I've got where I am, it's I've put my mind to it and I've managed to do it. And I think, that's also something that I sort of have always gone by as well. If you try the best you can. And even when I was at school, I was not very academic. I've got dyslexia and things like that. And so, I did sometimes sort of struggle. And, my mum and dad never put any pressure on me when it came to exams or anything like that. And they've always just said, just do the best you can. And that's what I've always done is just done whatever I can the best way.
We never put any pressure on you, but you passed the CSSW.
Yeah, I did pass the CSSW.
And she's one of the only females that passed the CSSW.
Yeah, there's a few
And
out there now.
There are now.
Yeah.
You've had it
I think
for a number of years, and you were one of the youngest ever when you took it, if not the youngest.
I was 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
You passed it at 20?
Yeah.
Because I've done it, and I passed it when I was like last year or a couple of years ago. It's intense.
Tough.
It's
It's
intense.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, they're probably always making it tougher.
Yeah.
Quite rightly so, because obviously they want people with that qualification to, you know, make sure that they know what they're doing. So, yeah, and I was, that was
good on you.
quite
Nice.
5 years ago now. Yeah.
So one of the last things we do is we have for everyone watching, we have a bowl of mystery. Our bowl of mystery has random questions in here. So we're gonna get, maybe Georgia, you go first. Swiggle around, pick one out, and then give us a quick fine answer for that question. If you could read out the question for everybody.
Give your best impression of a celebrity. Oh God, I'm rubbish at impressions. I'm trying to think of one. Give me one to do, and I'll try it.
Jimmy Savile came into my head.
Oh no!
That would be so inappropriate.
No, do another one. Can you think of one?
Okay, can you think of?
David Beckham.
Go on.
Oh, he's really Essexy, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, just going down the pub and going down with the boys to play a bit of football. Maybe something like that.
Good impression. That was good. And go on, Chris.
I hope I get an easier one.
Oh, goodness. Mine was hard.
Yeah, we put you a bit on the spot with that
Yeah.
What is the silliest way I've been hurt physically? There's probably loads of them. But one I remember was falling over in a pub and cutting my wrist. I've still got the scar there to show for it. And I did some damage to nerves and tendons back when I was a young man of like 21 years old. But
was that before the drinks or after the drinks?
No, fortunately, I hadn't been drinking too much. So I was. It wasn't an alcohol-induced one, but falling onto some glass.
Oh.
Which I've also done.
She's also, but you got it in your foot, didn't you?
Yeah, I ended up having an operation.
On a dance floor.
Wow.
Yeah, I was on a dance floor and it just went straight through, and then ended up having to get an operation.
Wearing sandals, wasn't you?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. While you answered Dad's
you got to do
question,
an impression
you got to do an
now.
impression. Georgia, you can give Chris an impression to do.
Oh, not Jimmy.
Make it an easy one.
An easy one. I can't think of anyone. Who do you like?
Who do I like? Kylie Minogue.
Do that one.
But I changed from Kylie. I changed from Kylie Minogue because remember when Catherine Jenkins
Oh yeah, when you done her basement.
had her basement? I changed.
Well, she's Welsh, isn't she? Do a Welsh accent.
Yaki da boyo.
What does that mean?
I don't. Oh, yaki da is. It means something like good luck or how are you in Welsh. You know.
We
We hope.
Someone
can translate in the
There'll
comments
probably
for
be
us.
somebody coming through on this podcast complaining about me. But you know, I can tell you a joke about the Welsh if you like.
Yeah, go for it.
So, tell me, why do they sing that song? There'll be a welcome in the hillside.
No idea.
Because they don't want you in the houses.
Well, one of the questions in here was actually tell us your best joke. So,
Oh God, I also don't have any.
Well, listen, I think that's time up today. First of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you guys are very busy, and work rarely stops. You said you were in the car just working away while you're waiting to come up here. So thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thanks for having us.
yeah.
It's been good.
It's been a great pleasure. Obviously, we've worked with you guys, and especially your dad for, you know, I must have known him now for 25 plus years. So it's always great to meet up with you guys again. And we've had a good long relationship. So Always like seeing you guys.
Yeah, it's good to always catch up.
Especially when you give me the samosas as well for free.
Yeah.
Well, definitely, like, you got to come round. Like I said last time, you got to come round and we'll have a proper
definitely.
Indian lunch, a proper Indian dinner, and you can
We
come
will,
round. But
we
also,
will.
thank you for the support. I mean, anytime we send an email across or we need some help, we need you guys to come out and visit us. You're there, like, within a click of a fingers. You're always supporting, always helping us. You're always letting us come round to the offices and giving us all the good information. And it's good to just catch up. So thank you very much. Long may it continue.
We're nothing without our customers.
Yeah, no, we appreciate the time, man. We appreciate the support. Thank you very much. That was it for today. If you have any questions for our guests, Chris and Georgia, you can put them in the comments, and we'll get them we'll forward it on to them, and we can get some answers back to you. And check out the Delta website. Plenty of useful information, and get in touch with the guys if you have any waterproofing queries. That was it. Take care. See you later. Bye bye.